TV, bringing you live with trending developments happening around the world. My name is Emidion James. Let's take a look at some of the headlines that we have for you today. Man suspected of shooting Minnesota lawmaker arrested after huge manhunt. G7 leaders in Canada to discuss Israel-Iran conflict hope to avoid Trump clash. Kremlin says Russia is ready to retaliate on Iran and to accept Iran's uranium. We'll bring you details of these stories and more on World View today. Please stay tuned. Thanks for staying tuned on Worldview. Our first story today is from the US, where a 57-year-old man has been arrested in the US state of Minnesota on suspicion of killing a Democratic state lawmaker and her husband. The arrest on Sunday night was the accumulation of huge two-day manhunt following the death of Melissa Hartman, a Minnesota Democrat, and her husband, Mark. State Governor Tim Walz called it a politically motivated assassination. Police said Vance Luther Bolster was armed at the time of his arrest in a rural area west of Minneapolis, but gave himself up peacefully when challenged. The suspect is also alleged to have shot and wounded Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yetted, who are both now awake in hospital. Hoffman said on Sunday that both felt incredibly lucky to be alive. Bolster was detained after investigators found a car he allegedly used in Sibley County, about 50 miles from the murder scene in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Air and SWAT teams were deployed to arrest the suspect in what was described as the largest manhunt in Minnesota's history. No police officer were injured during his apprehension, and officials said they were not looking for any other suspect. Meanwhile, Bolster was accused of impersonating a police officer to carry out the attacks before exchanging fire with police officers and fleeing from the area of suburban Minneapolis. Reports say that Melissa Hartman had served in the Minnesota House of Representatives for 20 years and was the Speaker of the Chamber from 2019 to 2025. Bolster, a former political appointee, was once a member of the same state workforce development board as Huffman. Investigators reportedly found a list of targets in the vehicle that the suspect is thought to have driven for the alleged shootings. Local media also reported that the names included Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Congressman Helen Omar, and State Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Elsewhere, a 37-year-old Australian police officer has been shot dead on a rural property in Tasmania while serving a warrant to repossess a home. Tasmania police said in a statement that the officer had arrived at a house in North Mountain near the town of Overstone today when he was fired at by a member of the public. A second police officer returned fire, injuring the suspect's hand. The suspect surrendered and later received treatment in hospital. Deadly shootings remains rare in Australia, which has strict gun laws. Following today's shooting, a crime scene was established in North Mountain and the coroner was notified, a police spokesperson said, adding that there is no ongoing threat to the public. In a related development, police in Utah said that three people, including an 8-month-old infant, were shot and killed, and two teenagers were wounded following an altercation between two groups at an annual carnival in the suburbs of Salt Lake City, Utah. According to the police department, a 41-year-old female bystander was among those killed, while an 18-year-old man in one of the groups involved in the altercation was also killed in a shooting that took place during Westfest at Centennial Park, West Villa City. Meanwhile, the City Valley Police Department also said that as police had approached to break up the arguments between the two groups, a 16-year-old male in one of them had pulled out a gun and opened fire at the other group. The police returned fire but did not hit the suspect. The father added that the suspect has been caught and taken into custody. The wounded teenagers, a male and a female, were both hit in their arms, but it was not clear if they were connected to the groups involved, the police added. There have been 156 such mass shootings in the United States so far this year, when defined as an incident with four or more people shot or killed, not including the shooter, according to the Gun Violence Archive. Away from that, US President Donald Trump has ordered an expansion of the detention and deportation of migrants across the country as protests against the policies. In a post on Truth Social, Trump called on federal agencies to do all in their power to deliver the single largest mass deportation program in history, naming Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York as specific targets. These cities are among the many where large-scale protests have broken out against raids on undocumented migrants since June the 6th. Trump has faced legal challenges and criticism for his response to the protests, particularly his deployment of the military to quell the demonstrations. Trump also said he had directed the entire administration to put every resources possible behind the effort. He has also promised to prevent anyone who undermines his policies. In a separate development, a group of 7 leaders will gather in the Canadian Rockies with the Israel-Iran conflict expected to be high on the agenda, while host Canada is striving to avoid clashes with President Donald Trump. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says His priorities are strengthening peace and security, building critical mineral supply chains, and creating jobs. But issues such as US tariffs and the conflict in the Middle East and Ukraine are expected to feature heavily during the summit. A G7 official said the leaders plan to issue a joint statement on Iran calling for de escalation. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz told reporters his goals for the summit include for Iran to not develop or possess nuclear weapons, ensuring Israel's right to defend itself, avoiding escalation of the conflict, and creating room for diplomacy. Meanwhile, Iran's President Pezeshkian said today that Iran does not intend to develop nuclear weapons but will pursue its right to nuclear energy and research, reiterating Supreme Leader Ayatollah al Khamenei's religious edict against weapons of mass destruction. Still in the Middle East, Iranian missiles struck Israel, Tel Aviv, and port city of Haifa before dawn today, killing at least 8 people and destroying homes, prompting Israel Defense Minister to warn that Iran's president would pay the price and soon. Iran said its parliament was preparing a bill to leave the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty (NPT), adding that Tehran remains opposed to developing weapons of mass destruction. Passing the bill could take several weeks. Israel is presumed to have a sizable nuclear arsenal, but neither confirms nor denies it. It is only Middle East state that has not signed the NPT. Israel's military, which has courted Iran's nuclear and military leadership with airstrikes, said today it had killed 4 senior intelligence officials, including the head of the Revolutionary Guard's intelligence unit. Meanwhile, Israeli authorities said a total of 7 missiles of the fewer than 100 fired by Iran overnight had landed in Israel. A military spokesperson also added that Israel had achieved aerial superiority over Iran and had destroyed more than a third of Iran's surface to surface missile launchers. Meanwhile, Iranian parliamentarians are preparing a bill that could push Tehran towards exiting the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the foreign minister said today, while reiterating Tehran's official stance against developing nuclear weapons. Also at the heart of the event, Poland is ready to start evacuating around 200 of its citizens who were on visit to Israel via Jordan's capital, Ahmed, a deputy foreign minister said today. In a related development, France shut down the 4 main Israeli company stands at Paris Air Show for refusing to remove offensive weapons from display in a move condemned by Israel and highlighting tensions between the traditional allies. A source familiar with the matter told newsmen today that the instruction came from French authorities after Israeli firms failed to comply with a direction from a French security agencies to remove offensive or kinetic weapons from the stands. The stands were those being used by Elbit Systems, Rafael, IAI, and U-Vision. 3 smaller Israeli stands which didn't have hardware on display, and an Israeli military of defense stand remained open. France, a longtime Israeli ally, has gradually hardened its position on the government of Benjamin Netanyahu over its action in Gaza and military intervention abroad. French President Emmanuel Macron made a distinction last week between Israel's right to protect itself, which France supports and could take part in, and strikes on Iran he did not immediately recommend. In this next report, UN nuclear watchdog Chief Rafael Grossi has provided an update today on the situation at Iran's nuclear facilities after Israel launched military strikes and said there was no such sign of further damage at Nazi or Fordoon enrichment site. Grossi and the International Atomic Energy Agency head had previously reported that the smallest of Iran's three enrichment plants, an above-ground pilot plant at the sprawling Natanz nuclear complex, had been destroyed. While there was no sign of a physical attack on a bigger underground enrichment plant at Natanz, its power supply was destroyed, which may have damaged the uranium enriching centrifuge there. No damage so far was seen at the Down plant dug into a mountain. We'll go on a short break. After the break, the spotlight will be on Africa and the Russian Ukraine war scene. Just stay with us. This is Worldview on Spectrum TV. Many thanks for staying tuned. We turn the spotlight now to Africa, where at least 100 people have been killed in an attack by gunmen on a village in Nigeria's central Benue State. Amnesty International Nigeria said Saturday the attack took place from late Friday into the early hours of Saturday in the village of Yelewata. The group said in a post on social media platform X. Many people are still missing, dozens injured and left behind adequate medical care. Many families were locked up and burnt inside their bedrooms, the post added. Let's move now to the Ukraine and Russia war scene, where Kremlin said today that Russia remains ready to act as a mediator in a conflict between Israel and Iran, and Moscow's previous proposal to store Iranian uranium in Russia remains on the table. Tehran says it has the right to peaceful nuclear power, but its swiftly advancing uranium enrichment program has raised fears in the wider West and across the Gulf that it wants to develop a nuclear weapon. Before Israel launched strikes on the Islamic Republic, Russia said last week that it stood ready to remove highly enriched uranium from Iran and convert it into civilian reactor fuel as a potential way to calm the crisis. In the meantime, more pressure must be exerted on Russia to secure a ceasefire in Ukraine, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said today, and urged the G7 nation to wrap up sanctions to achieve that goal. Leaders of the world's largest industrial nations are meeting in Canada's Rockies, with European countries seeking to keep the war in Ukraine firmly on the mind of US President Donald Trump, despite fighting breaking out between Israel and Iran in the Middle East. With diplomacy at a standstill, the European Union is set to adopt a new sanction package on Russia, but have so far failed to convince Trump, who has been reluctant to weigh on Russian President Vladimir Putin to impose new US sanctions. Trump has said he did not want the sanctions to interfere with getting a ceasefire. Away from that, thousands of people took to the streets of cities in southern Europe on Sunday to demonstrate against over-tourism, firing water pistol at shops' windows and setting off smokes in Barcelona, where the main protest took place. Protesters chanted in the streets of Barcelona, "Your holidays, my misery," while holding up banners emblazoned with slogans such as Mass tourism kills a city, and their greed brings up ruin. Barcelona, a city of 1.6 million, drew 26 million tourists last year. Authorities in the northeastern Spanish city said around 600 people joined a demonstration there, some firing water pistols or setting off colored smokes and putting stickers saying neighborhood self-defense. Tourists go home on shop windows and hotels. In a separate development, officials from U.S. National Transportation Safety Board (NTSB) surveyed the sites of Air Indian plane crash that killed at least 271 people, sources said today, with families continuing to wait for DNA profiling results to identify charred bodies. Along with the NTSB, officials from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration were in Ahmedabad in western India's Gujarat state, surveying the crash site, said one source with direct knowledge. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, with 242 people on board, bound for Gatwick Airport south of London before losing height seconds after takeoff in Ahmedabad on Thursday and erupted in a huge fireball as it hit a building below. All but one on board were declared dead in the world's most aviation disasters in decades. Around 30 people died on ground. Air India and Indian government were looking at several aspects of the crash, including issues linked to its engine thrust, flaps, and why the landing gear remained open as the plane took off and then came down. Last on Worldview today, a Norwegian court today found Athletes coach Gerrit Ingrid guilty of one count of minor assault against his daughter while acquitting him of all charges of physical and mental abuse against his twice Olympic champion son Jacob. Angel Brettons was sentenced to a 15-day suspended prison sentence and must pay compensation of 10,000 Norwegian crowns to his daughter for hitting her with a wet towel on one occasion. He will not have to serve a jail. I beg your pardon, he will not have to serve time in jail. Prosecutors had sought a prison sentence of 2.5 years in a trial that captivated the Nordic nation. Jacob Indri Bestan, who won gold medals in the 5,000 meters at the 2024 Paris Games and 1,500 meters in Tokyo in 2021, described during the trial in March a childhood he said was marked by fear and manipulation, accusing his father of incidents of violence. Judge Angel Bristan, aged 59, had pleaded not guilty in the case and denied the charges against him, telling the court he had been an overly protective father who had tried to help his ambitious children. And with that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtvlive.ng. I am Emma John James, and you've been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of the day. Bye for now.